Thank you so much. Thank you, Nick, for that informative presentation of yours. And then today I'm going to present on the year that I broke my brain. This is about how a head injury transformed my librarianship. So to introduce myself, my name is Nicole Clarkson. My title is Research and Engagement Services Librarian. I am at Calvin Smith Library, which is one of the libraries at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. And so the overview today, I'm going to briefly go into the injury itself, mainly the recovery stages, so that you have some context for when I go into the components of my post-concussive practices. Those four categories include memory assistance, task and time management, self-care, and body-mind acceptance, and asking for help. Each one of those sections will go through my process, but will also include questions you can ask yourself if you decide to implement these into your practice as well. And then I'll finish out with some hopefully relatable takeaways from the transform librarianship that I have undergone. So, how did I break my brain? Um, on September 10th of 2022, the only thing I can fault to is that I went to bed about 10 p.m. At 2 a.m. on September 11th, 2022, I woke up with a forehead contusion. So lots of swelling on my brain, on my head, and a line from my hairline to my eyebrow. We determined it was from a collision into a piece of furniture when I was in a sleepwalking episode. I sprinted into some piece of furniture in my bedroom at some point in the night. Um, that is what we've determined. The diagnosis was a concussion without loss of consciousness, though we often joke, how can you lose consciousness when you weren't conscious to begin with? And then the recovery came in several stages. So from September 2022 to November of 2022, that was just the initial phase of I am concussed. I was in constant migraine level pain. I couldn't do any cognitive exertion, so I gave up time at my master's program for my library science degree. I had two part-time jobs that I had to pause at the moment. Stimuli was also a big one. Social and sensory stimuli were out of the picture. So you find me locked in my apartment with barely any lights on, noise canceling headphones, coloring if I could. Otherwise, I was face down in bed with ice packs on my forehead and neck, trying to get through another day. If I did interact with people, I had absolutely horrible memory loss. I was forgetting names of people I had known for years and sentences I had uttered mere seconds ago. And then starting in November of 22 and continuing to February of 2023, I entered what I call my functional recovery. So I went back to my activities, my degree program, and my two part-time jobs. But I had to limit the level of cognitive exertion and stimuli that I endured. Otherwise, I would have intermittent but very severe pain back in bed with my ice packs if I did too much. As well, people were still noticing a significant amount of memory loss. And so I was getting instructions written down. People were repeating themselves constantly. And thankfully, they were all understanding and very patient with me as I struggled to retain and process information. And then starting in February of 2023, and in my opinion, to this day and beyond, I entered what I call my new normal recovery. I don't think I will ever be the person that I was on September 10th of 2022. And some of the things I notice as a result is that I still struggle with memory. That's where several of these techniques can come in, is to help with that memory loss that I still have. Get migraines several times a month, so I just live with that level of pain chronically. And then I typically get those migraines when I have overexerted myself or I'm overstimulated because I still have a significant sensitivity to both. And so memory assistance became um, a big part of, I'm sorry, I lost my Zoom screen for a second. There we go. Please hold. Memory assistance became a big part, like I said, of my process. And so for head injuries, daily logs became must-have memory aids. So in the initial phase of concussion recovery, I was writing down anything a human should remember. So what I ate, what I said, how I felt physically and emotionally, what even happened in a day, and then what was going to happen tomorrow so that I wasn't surprised when I woke up the next day and had to-do list items. Um, I thought I'd abandoned my daily logs once I returned to my jobs and my degree program and entered functional recovery. But I noticed as at one of my jobs, I was a student worker for the cataloging and metadata department at my graduate school. I was working on bibliographic records on a regular basis, and I was mixing up certain details or forgetting information that I'd already done that I needed to remember. And so I brought back the daily logs in that I was recording the title fields of the records and occasionally some notes on what I did or what I decided about those records into a digital document that I added to at the end of my shift. And as my responsibilities grew, I added those notes as well. So I was able to look at the next shift and go, okay, I did email that campus library already. And oh, thank goodness, I did get to that record and change that. But it looks like I forgot to do this. Let me go do that now. And then in 2024, I got this position as the Research and Engagement Services Librarian, and the daily logs automatically came with me. But now they were fleshed out details of everything I did in a day. I no longer waited till the end of my workday. I took everything down the moment after I did it. And the reasons I do it is so that I can track my workday activities. I can assess my productivity as well as my energy levels throughout different workdays. And I can just recount all relevant workday activities, either in the short term of when somebody asks, what did you do today at the end of your workday, or in weeks or months later when that information became applicable. And so part of me wanted to show you what a daily log would look like. You will find out in this slide why I can't show you what one looks like, but I'll describe one to you, and hopefully you can imagine it. So each log had a heading of the date that it was, and then underneath the date was a single bulleted list. That bulleted list was meant to clump a single day's activities into one spot, but the bullets themselves differentiated the different activities. So I'd have one bullet for emails to faculty that I sent. I'd have another for lesson planning that I did for my instruction sessions. I'd have another for purchases I made for our collections, etc. However, proper grammar completely ignored. I did not pay attention to how things were structured. The point wasn't narrative or making sense at all. It was the data. As long as I could read the data, it was good. That being said, grammar got replaced with extensive detail. So I would talk about what I did, why I did it, who was involved, what happened in response, all of those things that could be relevant later. And as a result, those entries get pretty long. I went and did a survey of my entries from February, which I keep, and the longest entry for a single day in February of 2026 was 371 words. You may look at that number and go, wow, she did 300 things in one day. I did not. I didn't even do 200. I didn't even do 100. It was that level of detail that made it so lengthy. And one of the reasons it's lengthy as well is that I don't anonymize names or class codes, which is also the reason you are not looking at one of my daily logs today. I do that so that I remember. I need to remember people's names. I need to remember the different classes that I worked with. But then as a result, to protect the privacy, I don't show these entries to anyone. That includes my direct supervisor, that includes my colleagues. No one has seen these logs, and they're just for me. And so if you were to apply some memory aids for yourself, you probably don't need one that's 375 words per day. But you may consider the following components when you're wondering what information you could take down on a regular basis. And some of them overlap, but I think they're all distinct questions in a certain degree to consider. The first is what's important. So what information will cost you to forget? Cost can obviously be monetary, but it doesn't have to be. So what will embarrass you to forget? What will decrease the level of trust that your colleagues and supervisors have in you if you forget? And what would increase the time and energy you have to devote to your work if you forgot that too? Also, what's helpful to reference? What information could you potentially need later? I once pulled a detail from an old log that I had done something very unique at a Monday at 4 p.m. That was not information that cost me to forget, but it was so helpful to the thing that I was doing that it fell into that second category of helpful to reference. And then finally, what's easy to forget? It doesn't have to be helpful, it doesn't have to be important, but what is your brain gonna erase if you don't write it down? Names are a big one for me, so I may not need to remember the names of every student consultation that I do, but I write them down because if I don't, they will disappear. And so my daily logs look towards the past. They're about recalling information that's already happened. So if I look towards the future, that's where my task and time management skills come in. And so when I was injured, task list became needed to track all of my pertinent action items. So there's an example on this slide that just had 3 simple steps of picking up my groceries from the store, calling my father, and checking my mailbox. That was all I could manage in a day, and but they were 3 items that needed to get done, and if I forgot any of them, it would have been a problem. My task list definitely came with me as I recovered. In my functional recovery, they stayed pretty simple, but they expanded to include those small items that I had, but also bigger projects that I needed to keep on my radar, even though they weren't items that needed to be accomplished that day. And it was another digital list, so I was crossing things off as they were completed digitally. In my new normal recovery, particularly at this job, I have 2 separate lists, one for my personal life, one for my professional life. And they're color coded, organized in a table in a Google Doc since I work on a Google campus, and they're sorted by due date and or priority. I will break all of that down. That's a lot of information. I'll break all of that down in the following slides so that you can decide which of these components might help you. And so the first element is the color-coded task name, and that's in column 1 of the table. So there's an example on the slide with green text for one box that says March task list. There was a gray text that was for the speaking notes for this presentation, and there's a red text that says team meeting. You can also see the key that I had for all the colors. There's 12 colors ranging from red for those meetings that I attend on a regular basis to gray for the publications and presentations that I'm working on. Why would I take the time to color code my entire task list when I could easily just leave them as plain text? For one, plain text looking at a task list as long as I have can get overwhelming. And so adding the colors just kind of shows, okay, I can break this down. There are different types of cognition, so I know I'll be okay. But also it's eye-catching in a specific way. All 12 of these colors represent things that I should be doing on a regular basis because of my job description. So if I glance at a month's task list and I see, great, I have as much lavender as I need for my committee work, I'm doing great with the light blue for my instruction, there is little to no orange for my collection development. Um, I can see that immediately and then go, okay, where can I shift my priorities to make sure there's enough orange to make sure that I'm doing what I need to do. And then element 2, which is column 2, is the dates and times for all the tasks. One of them says March 11th, just March 11th. So whatever that was, it was due or I wanted it done on March 11th. And then the next one is also March 11th, but it has 10 a.m. So that was when it was exactly due or when it was exactly happening. And I gave due dates to things even if they technically didn't have due dates. Because I needed to remember to be working on them, even if they were bigger projects, to progress through them. It's also the main reason that it was a table in a Google Doc rather than what you might think, which is a spreadsheet. Those rows are easy to move. And so I'm not perfect, and I would complete tasks later than I needed to. And so if I didn't complete one for the day, I could easily move that row down to a different day. And or if I was doing a great job and I completed something early, I could move it up so that it got deleted with the other tasks that I completed in a day. Element 3, which took column 3, was the priority tag. I used the smart chips for this as well. Red for critical meant it was an urgent must-do task. I couldn't extend it. Green for required was a must-do task that's not urgent, so I can move that one if I needed to, but it had to get done eventually. Important is something I should do, but I can postpone it. So if I decide that I just don't have time or energy, it's okay. And optional is a can-do task. That one's blue, but only if there's time, because that frequently comes with an example is like surveys from an email list. Would be nice to do, but I don't have to. And then column 4 is the status tag. And these are other colored smart chips. Blue being not started, which means no work was done, but that's okay. Yellow is in progress, which is started but needs finishing. Green, completed, is done, can remove from the list. Red is important. It's overdue, which means that little to no work was done, but it should be complete by now. Those get dragged to the top of the day's list so that I remember this is a priority. And so if you're deciding on your task list elements, should you decide to create a task list for the things you need accomplishing, is one, do you want to code your tasks, whether it's with colors, numbers, etc., because you wear many hats and want to differentiate what you do in a day, a week, a month, etc. And then dates or times. Do you miss deadlines, which are important, or do you even miss checkpoints on bigger projects and want a way to keep track of those? That was a big one for me. I was missing checkpoints, and I needed to make sure I was slowly working on things instead of cramming them in right before they were due. And then, is it helpful to further track how critical a task is to complete? If it is, consider those priority or status tags. And then another part was self-care and body-mind acceptance. So for head injuries, brain breaks are needed to ease brains into and out of cognitive exertion. So during the initial phase, constant brain break. My brain was not working. But in functional recovery, I used brain breaks before and after all of my activities. And then in new normal, breaks were as needed. I needed to listen to my body and my mind. And so at least once a day to make sure that I'm not overexerting myself, but I had to check in and be like, do I need yet another one today? Has today been a hard day and I need multiple? And so there's actually three types of brain breaks for me. The one that I think we'd all think of is low cognition breaks, which are the ones when I have nothing left to give. And so I have an activity that requires no major thinking. For me, that's coloring. And I have my specific book with my specific pens. It is my go-to. But there's also screen time breaks. So it might mean that I need a blue light break. I don't need to necessarily stop cognition, but I need to turn away from my computer or smartphone. For that one, I will abandon electronics, grab a physical notebook, grab a writing utensil, and do some journaling that way. And then the toughest one to figure out was the high energy breaks. So that's where my brain was tired, but my body wanted to lean into activity. So I was like, I'm buzzing, but I'm tired. And that's when I go for a run. And so I believe that anyone can utilize all three of these brain breaks at certain degrees, but you may decide that the three examples I gave were terrible and would not work for you. And so I encourage you to ask for low cognition breaks, what activities are mindless yet accessible at work? I think we can all agree that work is where most of our cognition goes, and we probably need brain breaks there or before and after that as well. And then for the screen time breaks, what activities can you do to get away from your computer for a bit? It can be something that lets you leave your desk completely, or you can just turn around and crochet for a little bit. That might be an option for you. And then high energy breaks, what activities release physical energy but do not tax the brain? Can you go for a full-blown walk around the building? Do you have steps that you can go up and down? What's a way you can get some modified movement that lets your body release its energy so that your mind doesn't have to? And then another component of self-care is that I had to listen closely and creatively to my body and mind because I lost my cues or they were completely altered. So three examples are on the slide of I have a migraine, particularly in functional recovery. I'd noticed I have this migraine. I had to realize that meant I was doing too much. It wasn't random. It was telling me something. Another one was that I would basically freeze in place. And I'd be wondering, why can't I move or speak right now? And it was because there was too much stimuli coming in. I couldn't function anymore. I needed to either decrease the amount of stimuli or remove myself completely from the situation because I was useless. And then probably the most unique one, which is why I talk about it, is that I lost my hunger cues completely when I first got hit in the head. And no hunger cues and memory loss doesn't go well together. And so I found myself dreaming about food while I was napping and resting. And so when I woke up and I was like, why did I dream about food? I realized I forgot to eat. And so I had to go grab a snack or a meal because that was my brain's way of telling me, I can't make your stomach growl and I can't let you remember that you missed this. So I'm going to figure out a way to tell you. And I had to do that without judgment. It is what it is, which is something I still do. My new normal recovery still has atypical cues that I have to scrutinize without an opinion on it. So if I tire out mid-workday, it doesn't mean it's time for caffeine. It means it's time for a brain break. And if I'm irritable and not engaged in a task that I should be doing or that I should even be enjoying, it means I'm overstimulated because I'm still sensitive to that. It's just that I don't freeze in place like I used to. And then My brain will feel fuzzy if something's about to go wrong, whether that's I'm about to be in pain, I'm about to have some other crisis going on. And so I have to realize, okay, my brain is fuzzy, which means something is about to go wrong. I need to tune in to which thing is about to go wrong, um, so that I can avoid a full-blown crisis. And so I encourage you to find your own body mind cues, because even if you've never hit your head, it's still important to listen to what your body and mind are telling you in order to be the most effective librarian that you can be. So for your common cues, how does your body express hunger, thirst? How do you know you need more sleep? And then maybe you have thresholds for stimuli like I do. Doesn't have to be the same. Mine are particularly low thresholds, but I'm certain that you have some thresholds somewhere. And so where are they? And what do you need to do to regulate when you pass your threshold? And then notice if you have uncommon cues. I think probably the most popular uncommon cue is auras for things like migraines and seizures. So if that's something you deal with, then notice those. Um, if you have some type of food allergy, food sensitivity, seasonal allergy, etc., pay attention to those too. All of these will cue you in to when you need to adjust what you're doing to be the most effective version of you. And the thing I hate the most that I had to learn about was asking for help. Um, just in the midst of head injuries, it was absolutely impossible to do everything you need to do that you used to do independently pre-concussion. So 3 examples are on this slide where I asked friends for rides to places because I couldn't walk anywhere and I couldn't drive. If I went to an appointment, I asked family members to come with me because I would forget the instructions I was provided. I would forget the questions I wanted to ask. I wouldn't get the care I need and I wouldn't know to protest, etc. And then probably the most unique and beneficial one is that I was in one class at the time that I got hit in the head, and I asked that professor, can we get rid of deadlines for the assignments because I'm just not going to be on track? And she said yes. She said, as long as you get all your work done by the end of the semester, then I don't care. Um, and so that was an adjustment that I was able to ask for and receive. And if I had not asked for help, I wouldn't have gotten that flexibility. And so when I'm feeling brave, I still ask for help, but I use this model in particular because if I'm just nebulous and go up to somebody and say, "Can I have some help?" We're both stressed. We don't know what I need. We don't know how the help can be administered. And so this is the way I know how to ask for help, is first I identify the source or sources of my stress. Just where is it coming from? Then I list either mentally or physically possible and specific changes that can be made. Possible just means humanly possible. Doesn't have to mean that it's possible for me. Doesn't have to mean it's possible for the person next to me. Just what is humanly possible. And then specific is how granular of a step can I make to get something to change about my source of stress. Then I look at my own power and resources. What can I change in this list of possible and specific changes? That's A, empowering. I can do something. And B, I can go ahead and do it. And that way, part of the problem is solved. And so then I look at sources of other power and resources and decide, okay, they're who I need to ask for help. And now I can reference this list of possible and specific changes and go, I think this is specifically what they can help me with. And that gives them direction as well, that they can be like, absolutely, I can help with that. Or no, I cannot help with that. An example is on this slide as well. This is with my direct supervisor. I realized I said yes too many times. I have too many projects on my plate. The thing that I realized I could do that was possible and specific is that I made a list of all of the responsibilities I had. I coded them based on importance, difficulty, and timing. The thing I asked her to do was review the list to decide what I can drop and delegate. Because if I had started dropping and delegating my responsibilities, it would have raised red flags. It probably would have been a move that was scrutinized. But when my boss and I looked at the whole list, she was able to say, I can tell you for certain, this is not as high of a priority as you think it is. This can be a future Nicole project. And I see why you wouldn't have the resources to do this. I know someone else who does. Let me ask them for help with this project. And it was such a good interaction and source of help that this is actually a working tool we use 4 times a year. And so I encourage you to use this framework for your own needs. So go ahead and identify those sources of stress. What factors are influencing those sources the most? Go ahead and list those possible and specific changes. What is humanly possible to change about your source of stress? And how many granular steps will it take to accomplish some change, some meaningful change? And then look at power and resources. What is in your control? What do you have the capacity, whether that's time, energy, capability, etc., to act on? And then who else might be able to do more than you are capable of? Um, and voila, you get some very beneficial help for your needs. And so I'm going to finish out with 3 takeaways from the librarianship that I have now. So lesson 1 of broken brain librarianship is that while I identify as disabled and chronically ill and therefore have accommodations, you do not need those labels to accommodate yourself. There's no permission slip needed to do things differently. The norm is not prescriptive, and go ahead and just say, I'm going to do this a tad bit differently because of my own needs, because of my own strengths, even. And most of the time, you don't have to ask to do that, just do it. Which relates to lesson 2 of broken brain librarianship, is that nobody scrutinizes my processes, like my task list, my daily logs, when I keep delivering effective, timely, and high quality work. The same is likely true for you. No one's going to peek behind the curtain if what you're doing is suitable or even fantastic. And then finally, I came up with all of these strategies because they work for my unique needs. Yours will look different if you decide to adopt any or all of these, simply because you're not me. Even if you got hit in the head 4 years ago and it was your third head injury of your life and you're a librarian, your process will still look different because we are 2 unique people, and that is beautiful and perfect, and the reason that I'm talking to you today in such detail. So I thank you for attending and for participating in this conversation. If you want to follow up with me about any of this, I have included my email, nicole.clarkson@case.edu. And my caveat is please do not wait until you are concussed to reach out to me. I would like to talk to you before you receive a head injury, should that be in your future. Hopefully not. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Nicole. That really resonated with me as someone with a disability that came later in life, and I'm sure lots of other people as well. We do have time for a question, and we do have a question for you, which is, did you have any problems being able to implement this kind of flexibility, and how supportive was your manager, especially when moving to a new role?
Yeah, so thankfully, when I first got hit in the head, I worked with some fabulous people who understood her brain does not work like it used to. Let's come up with systems. And when I got this new job, most of these systems were already established. And so all I had to do was say, hey, I have a system. Didn't have to reveal what it was. I just said, I have a system, and I'm going to implement it here. And um, you know, something to keep in mind as you're working with me. And so my manager knows about certain things. She's never seen my daily logs, like I said, but she knows they exist, and she's like, great. Task list as well. She's like, fabulous if that gets your work done. Like I said, nobody, particularly at this new job, how I perform because I just do my job, and that's the important part.
Brilliant. Thank you. Um, does anyone else have a quick question? I don't see anything in the chat. Just lots of people saying thank you so much. Um, yeah. So yeah, I guess we can kind of end there. Thank you so much, Nicole. And also thank you so much to Nick. Everyone, please join me in thanking both of our presenters. And we will see you all again, hopefully in the last set of sessions for today at 5 o'clock UK time. That is in 15 minutes. Thank you, everyone.